today's presentation, first, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Andy Brown. It's so wonderful to have you all here. I am honored to be joined by, colleagues, people who are experts in the field, and the people I'm honored to call friends as well. There's not one of them I wouldn't have a bowl of cereal with and talk for hours about, everything, counseling and most things that are not. And today we're going to broach a very relevant topic. Our title is Behind the Mask, a panel discussion on navigating authenticity. It's incredibly relevant because there's never been more adversaries to authenticity. We have a divided world, really, not just a nation, but a divided world in which we live. We have divisiveness that can lead to cancellation of people, whatever that means. We have so many different things that really keep people bottled up and behind masks. Um, the lack of authenticity robs us of the ability to connect at a deeper level. It also creates a fertile soil for loneliness and isolation. And for us as counselors and budding counselors, it creates a problem with connecting with the people who are in front of us. So today, before we move forward, I want each panelist to have a moment to introduce themselves, and then we're going to flow into some of the questions I think that hit to this topic very specifically. So we'll start with Dr. Stuart Spencer.
Hey guys, I'm Sarah Stewart Spencer. I've been a professor and a clinician for almost 2 decades now, which feels really weird to say. But I focus mainly on trauma, PTSD. I work with first responders and absolutely love this field. And I really am getting excited about the idea of what we're going to talk about because I have no idea what's going to come up out of this group. So the spontaneity of it is really fun. So
Okay, and Dr. Kelly James.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm Dr. Kelly James. I have been in the mental health field since 97 in a variety of different roles. I specialize in trauma and play therapy. I have retired from being a play therapist, but at heart I am a play therapist. And again, I am excited about what's coming up too, because I think being authentic in the session with a client is what also helps them do the work they need to do.
Okay, thank you. And last but not least, Dr. Rob Eubanks.
Hey, so I am associate professor at Capella University. Been with them for I think I'm going to my 18th year. And so I was with the clinical mental health counseling side for 13 years. And then for the past, do the math, so 6 years, whatever. Actually, I was the adjunct for a while too, marriage and family therapy. I love this topic. Person-centered therapy. On the MFT side, we have collaborative therapy, which is very, very similar. Those are like my foundational models that I really love for so many reasons that I'm sure will come to light today. So
Well,
glad to be here.
and Dr. Eubanks, you're also an actor. You left out that part.
Yeah, well, just kind of presenting what's relevant, I guess. But yes, I'm actually about to go to a movie set and this afternoon, and I'm in a zombie movie. So this will be like my 35th film that I've been in.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. When I first met him, he had hair. I mean, that's how long ago
yeah,
we've
well,
known each other for that long. So let's move forward with these questions. I know that the people who've come really are interested in what you all have to say about this. We began with Dr. Stuart Spencer, so I will begin with Dr. Kelly James. Dr. Kelly James, what does authenticity actually look like in therapy?
For me, I think it's being consistent, it's being present. Because if something else is going on in my mind and the client is talking and I'm not being present with them, I'm not being authentic. I'm not listening. I think it's being congruent that my body language, my tone, my facial expression all match what the client is saying. So those are things that mean I'm being authentic with the client, being a human.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Eubanks, tell us what like when you think of authenticity in therapy, what comes to mind?
Does a client experience me in the room as they would see me at a coffee shop with a friend, essentially?
Hmm.
Am I present? Am I myself? Am I laughing? Am I focused? Am I, you know, connected with who they are and how they're presenting themselves? Um, yeah, essentially just the how am I in the world? I shouldn't be any different in the therapy room. Of course, there's boundaries. Yeah, we'll talk about that, but overall, yeah, for me, that's exactly what it is. I shouldn't be any different outside of the world than inside of the world in respect of their experience of me.
Okay, very good. We're going to delve into that because you brought up some really interesting boundary and ethical issues there with your statement as well, which I think is part of the issue with balance that a lot of people have. But before we move to that, we need to come over to Dr. Stewart Spencer too, and to find out what she looks like in therapy. What does authenticity look like in therapy for you, Dr. Spencer?
I think Rob kind of hit it as like there's this piece of like who I am. And I actually feel like I've said this to students, like who I am with friends, who I am with colleagues, who I am with clients. There's not this massive, huge difference in the sense of who I am in a genuine. It's not performative, it's not scripted. I'm not going into put on my clinical jargon. Like I'm not going into like, like, oh, I put a lab coat on and I walk in. Like there is this sense of like, this is who I am in the world. And this is the genuine connection that I want to foster with clients. And I think and I want to say for anyone listening too, authenticity doesn't mean self-disclosure. It doesn't mean then I just open the door to who I am. It means that my willingness to connect in my real self is present. And in authenticity, there's also this willingness to acknowledge your own humility around not knowing or bias or limitations, because there are times, especially like when sometimes clients say, yeah, and then they say something, you're like, yeah, and it was like this. And I'm like, I have no idea what that is. And it's the exact same thing if I'm standing in a grocery store line and somebody says that they did that, I'd be like, I have no idea what that is. Tell me. So I think that when I think about authenticity, there's this deep sense of genuine connection, but not necessarily the emotional exposure of, I'm just now going to let you see all of me. It means I'm here to connect in a really real way that takes away scripts and titles, and it feels very equal in that sense.
Okay, thank you. And Dr. Eubanks brought up something I want to segue into, and it's the balance between being personal and being authentic and professionalism. And one of the things that was not taught to me at the grad school level is the fact that, what was really focused on is you're entering a professional relationship, and you very much are. But they didn't talk about the fact that this was a real relationship. And neurobiologically, your body doesn't differentiate. Your body doesn't say neurologically, well, this person doesn't count. If you cut me, I bleed. If I lose a client, it hurts me. I can develop vicarious trauma through this client, so on and so forth. Yet, how do I strike that balance between this real relationship and this professional relationship? Dr. Eubanks, you brought that up, so I'm going to let you start with this one. Like, how do you strike that balance?
So say it again, the balance between what?
Yeah, professionalism and authenticity.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I think Sarah really just summed it up really well, though. And it's I mean, I have boundaries even with whoever I'm sitting with at the coffee shop to go back there, I mean, it's my, anyone in my family, it's like there's certain things I don't talk about,
Mhm.
and so it's just it's kind of it's the same. Let, maybe I can pull in another piece. One thing that I teach is our responsibility as therapists is to create the experience of warmth, of safety, of trust, of non-judgment, of congruence. I usually write it up on this board, and it's like 30 things, and it's overwhelming to a new therapist to look at that and go, "Oh my God, I got to be responsible for having a client feel all of these things about me and about us in a room together." And I'm like, "Yeah, you got to do that." Well, how do you do that? The easiest way to do that is really through the sense of finding within yourself the ability to breathe and to settle and to relax and to just be present in the sense of not, being aware of the thoughts that are coming in that are telling you, like, I've got to know stuff. I've got to be a therapist. I've got to fix stuff. And taking a breath and setting that aside and say, I'm really interested to get to know this person. We have this idea of curiosity over in collaborative language systems, and having this voice of curiosity is what I talk about often. And it's really interest. Someone comes in and they're labeled as depressed. Well, what the hell does that mean? I that plays out differently for everybody. And so I get really interested and curious, like, what is this depression thing for you? How is this playing out for you? Everyone has a different experience with that. I've experienced that before, and I'm sure it was different than it is for you. With that curiosity, help me understand what that's like, you know. But coming in with a not knowing stance, I don't know. I'm not the expert in your experience. I've got some ideas and some experiences of my own and some knowledge around things, but teach me. When you take that position, you take a one down position, the equality is quite different than going in as a one up position of, me therapist, me doctor, whoever, and gonna, tell me what you got and I'm gonna tell you what to do. So,
Andy, can
Okay,
I
thank
add
you.
on to that?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I was going to go to you next, Dr. Kelly James. I'm very interested about what you have to add.
I agree with everything you said. Kind of for me, professionalism is the container of the session. So I'm going to be prepared. I'm going to have reviewed my previous session notes. I'm going to make sure there's no distractions. I'm going to make sure the environment is clean and ready for the client. That then allows me to be authentic, to calm down, and to take the one down, and to listen and be curious. So they're not separate things; they go together for me.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I'm gonna piggyback a little bit. So I love that you said like they're not separate. They're not in opposition to each other. And it for me it kind of brings up like Wiseman's work around how a really healthy therapeutic relationship, it always oscillates between this sense of connection and the sense of boundary.
Mm,
And they're not in opposition, but they balance each other. They create that sense of this healthy place where I can connect with you and I can be close to you and I can have that connection. But it doesn't necessarily require self-disclosure or my stuff in the room and to bring in my bias or to bring in my baggage or to bring in my trauma responses. And there's almost the sense of this constant balancing that essentially has to happen, which requires quite a lot of self awareness and requires a lot of comfort in your own emotional response or your own knowing the closets that have been closed over the years that we don't open because it's never out of the blue, some client will come in and just tap one of those closets a little bit. So I feel like there's this constant balance always kind of happening between connection and closeness, and then relying on our professional boundaries and some of that professionalism that we just kind of stay in this really great space of being willing to be ourselves.
And I think, Sarah, um, it's how would I want to be treated if this were my
Mm,
therapist?
yes.
And so that's it, keeping the client always at forefront. This is not about me. This is about them. Is important for what both of you said.
Hmm.
mm. Very good. Thank you very much. I think of as self-application. I got up this morning, I went through my questions, I honed some things out. I got a shower and I put on a three-button shirt to come and to bring my best professional foot forward. And at the same time, I'm wearing gym shorts because that's the comfort in who I am. And so that's my balance. And when I think of professionalism and being my authentic self, like in this present space, in this time, and at this place, and being, with you all right now. And this actually, you've already kind of addressed some of these things vicariously, but let's direct our attention to what gets in the way of authenticity.
I think unresolved personal issues. I
Yes.
Okay,
think
Dr. James, you jumped in there first. I want to hear more about what that means because you said that with a big laugh. So I've got to hear what's behind the laugh.
well, I have told students for years and years and years, you have to do your own emotional healing work. You have to do it. One, because you don't want to get triggered that countertransference in the session. But you also, how do you know you've taken a client to the end of their healing if you don't know what it looks like yourself? You have to do it. And how can you be authentic in a session if you're sitting there trying to protect yourself from anything they say? You're not listening to understand them, you're listening to protect yourself. So you have to do your own work first.
Okay,
I'm
Dr.
going to piggyback a little
Spencer.
bit off of what
Yes.
Kelly said. And I think it's really strange when people go, I want to pilot a plane, but you've never flown in a plane. You cannot be a pilot without getting on an airplane and experiencing it. Do not study, do not train, do not go to school, do not spend money, do not spend time to go be a pilot when you yourself have never even been willing to sit in the passenger seat. And that feels very, to me, like it doesn't make sense. Like I can't calculate that in my mind, how so many therapists want to be therapists and have not gone through their own therapy. And I agree 1,000% that, that unresolved issue is going to come up. And I don't even think it's a stumbling block. It feels more like quicksand because
Sure.
you have no idea where quicksand is. You are just walking through the forest or the jungle with the client, and all of a sudden you're sinking in it and you're not moving. And that stills so much from the journey of being authentic. Instead, you're sinking. And
Right.
so this idea of, allowing something to steal from this whole process when it could be your superpower. Like I have touched the depths of my emotion. I know what that feels like. I know where it feels like in my body, that comfort with that. I think that really steals from the idea of authenticity. And in the beginning, another thief in this process would be when we think we're supposed to look like a therapist.
Mm,
And that like I say, like almost like the lab coat of like, oh, I'm gonna walk in with a doctor's coat and this is what I'm gonna look like. It's okay to not know the answers. It's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to have a rupture, repair it. Like it's okay to not exactly 100% understand the experience. That's where, when Rob said that curiosity, that's where that comes in. When we put a mask on, it becomes performative and we want to hide behind our training, our expertise, or clinically jargon it up. I think that's a huge thief as well, that steals from just sitting in that space with the person. Um,
I think needing to fix a client, thinking that we have to
yes.
fix a client, it's not our job. It's, and rescue them from their situations. I think those are
mm,
also thieves. And not being able to be comfortable with silence,
Yes.
mm.
I think are also impactful to not being authentic.
Dr. Kelly
Mhm.
James, you brought up a good vicarious question, and I'm going to start with Dr. Eubanks over here and work our way around here. It aligns with the blocks to authenticity. What professional messages have you received about how therapists should act that have gotten in the way of authenticity? Dr. Eubanks.
That they have to do something, that it's your responsibility to like have them walk out the door with three steps of success.
Hmm.
And when you get that in your head, then you start forcing your agenda on a client who's really just wanting something else. You know, maybe just wanting to be heard and understood, maybe just wanting to feel a sense of connectedness. Maybe they want, some steps to success, but they want to be a part of that process rather than being dictated to by you. That's a huge one right there that I see a lot, especially with new therapists. And so I'm going to leave it there. Yeah, I don't want to go on a
Okay. All
tangent.
right.
I'll save my
Uh,
tangent till later, but let me leave it at that.
All right, I'm gonna flip over here to Dr. Kelly James. Dr. Kelly James, you've been in the profession for a minute here, and by a minute I mean a few decades and
Mhm.
whatnot. So, when you think about the professional messages that you've received about how therapists should act, what were some of those messages? How did they get in the way of authenticity?
A lot, that you can't be emotional, that you always have to have the answers, and you don't only have to have the answer, you have to have the right answer. You have to be objective at all times. Um, and you have to do everything right. Another thing that I find is that, never touch a client. And yes, I understand we have professional boundaries, um, there's plenty of ethics around that. But being a child therapist for a long time and a child hug me, I'm not going to hug them back. That's not being authentic. That child is demonstrating that they feel connected to you. And I'm just going to stand there like a board. I didn't initiate the contact, but if they hugged me, I would hug them back. I had adult clients that did the same thing. And so again, my boundary is I'm not going to initiate it, but I'm also going to respond if that client feels the need to do that. And that's being authentic. I would hug any friend I have, any grandchild, any child. And so that for me is being authentic in the session with the client.
Dr. Stewart Spencer, what messages have you received about how therapists should act that have gotten in your way of being authentic?
So I think there's this, for me, the message was kind of prim, proper, and reserved. I think is one of the pieces, like that's what professionalism looks like. And I work with majority men, and most of them are first responders, military, um, and that's not really a prim and proper population. So do we cuss? Do we scream in a session? Yeah, we do. Is that authentic to who I am? Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I'm
So,
surprised that she's not yelled out some profanity in the last half hour. It's been shocking, but
Not over yet.
again, our time's not over yet. We've touched upon, and Dr. Kelly James, I'm going to
Wait,
start
can
with
I
you.
can I hop in on that real quick?
Yes,
Just there's
please.
one pet peeve that I got to throw in here, and it's already come up, but self-disclosure, and I think that message is drilled too hard into, and it still is too hard into new therapists. That is one of the best ways to connect with a client is to have them see that you're human, is to share a bit of your own experience as it relates to their experience and as it is relevant. But it's to have someone sense that you're a real person and you're there with them and you're willing to be vulnerable because we're sitting there asking them, I want you to be 100% vulnerable with me and tell me about this trauma. Oh my God, who are they talking to? Only will they do that if they feel a sense of connectedness with someone that they're speaking to a human first, and a human that is who cares and is willing to be a little bit vulnerable with them as well too. So
So can I ask, when you're in the session and you're recognizing maybe I need to self-disclose, do you have a question you ask yourself before you disclose?
yeah, it's I really I want to make sure I'm not driven by emotion because oftentimes that's what spurs self-disclosure is you get wrapped up kind of in their process and what's going on, and it's like me too, and I had this and kind of like, you really got to be careful about what's initiating you speaking, really anytime, but really when it comes to self-disclosure, if if I'm thinking that like I'm hearing an opportunity and I'm like, oh, this, yeah, I'm sensing they're holding back. I'm sensing a little bit of vulnerability that's feeling like a little bit too much there. I also have a great experience I could share about my own, experience with loss or a friend who committed suicide, and and that's the opportunity coming from a place that's objective and isn't loaded with emotion. Does that make sense?
It does. And I kind of ask myself when that comes up, oh, I could share this. Is sharing this going to help the client continue to move through their process?
Exactly.
And that's kind of what I evaluate before I self-disclose.
Dr. Eubanks, you brought up something really good. Okay, Dr. Spencer has something to add. I could tell
Yeah,
by her finger.
I want to extend it out a little bit because I think that this is such a spectrum kind of discussion. And so I think that sometimes when we use the word self-disclosure, there's this immediate thought in especially and I'm going to personalize that to new therapists, like then it's you and you tell every detail of your stuff and you kind of, but self-disclosure can be so small in the first step of the spectrum. And I want to pull a little bit from what Dr. James said around what's the question. My question is, I add a little bit of that on is like, how long have we known each other?
Mm.
Because the stronger the relationship, the more self-disclosure in small bits can be really powerful. And the newer the relationship, it can differ, it can actually hurt it depending on the amount, right? So like I'm also like, how long have we been together that this is like gonna be, is it helpful? And have we been together long enough that the relationship is strong enough to hold? Now I come into the room as well, right? Um, but the part that stands out to me is like self-disclosure on the spectrum is like, and I'll use an example from a session last week where someone was discussing this high level of self-expectation around like when, it needs to be better like all the time, 100%. And I was like, whoa, let's pause there. Like that's a really heavy expectation to have 100% of good days. And I said, I'll even say for myself, like I'm really only at like a 92. Sometimes a 90. Like, and that's okay. I'm comfortable with that because the human experience I recognize is going to have fluidity, right? So then there was this moment of like, oh, okay. Then it almost became like, so you also sometimes have bad days. Yeah, I'm a human. Those humans are just, wrought with bad days every now and then. That's okay. That's technically, if we look at the spectrum of self-disclosure, saying this is my experience too, it didn't require me to say, let me tell you what my bad day looks like in great detail. And the last one was 3 days ago and it looked like this. And so I think for new therapists, there's this because we don't, and I'll pull Dr. Eubanks's point in, because we drive it so hard that there's this really firm line that we don't really discuss what the spectrum looks like of what and how self-disclosure can happen in a session.
I think this should be a presentation in and of itself. Like we just gave three very clear and different steps to self-disclosure that I think have very clear boundaries and utility. And so I love this. Yeah.
Let's drill down a little bit further because one of the things that all three of you kind of brought out too that was underneath that are drives, neurobiological drives, emotional drives. Dr. Eubanks, you talked about emotions and not letting emotions drive, and Dr. Kelly James and Dr. Spencer, you both talked about things that you're very cautious of as well. So when you think about the emotions in the nervous system and whatnot, as far as connecting authentically, what practices help you become more grounded and relationally available before and during sessions? So this is more of a practical applications things because each one of you has a high level of authenticity, but how do you get there?
Well, for me, I've been practicing mindfulness meditation for over 10 years now, daily practice. And I mean, that's all that is connecting you with the present moment and with what's going on right now. And that building that muscle, it has been so valuable to be able to be in a session with someone and understand what's going on within me and be connected with that at the same time connected with the client and not confused about it. So that's really the I would say the core of for me.
All right. Dr. Kelly James, what do you do?
I think what he said, mindfulness, meditation. I've been meditating for a long time. Also walking, um, practically session to session. Like where my feet are right now, I'm barefooted, but I have a grounding mat that keeps me grounded. Between sessions, I go out and stand in the grass for a couple of minutes to ground. I'll go for a few minute walk. One of the things when I was doing in-office therapy is the client would leave and I would reach up to the door frame and then just like stretch forward and breathe, doing a lot of breathing, kind of that release of everything all the energy that I took on from them, and then bringing myself back to my own energy and paying attention to my own regulation, because the brain has two states, regulated and dysregulated. And if my brain is regulated, I can be responsive to whatever's happening. But if I've slid over into some dysregulation, then I'm going to be reactive. And so I have to be aware of my own emotional state, my own nervous system. And when my nervous system is calm, I can be present.
Mm. Okay,
Um,
Sarah.
I would say there's probably a couple of things, especially if it's a new client. And I will check to see if I feel any sense of like jitters or like my stomach or anything, especially with someone new. Um, and I just kind of always ground myself back to it's just about connecting. And I think for me, because that's the vehicle that all things ride in, that if I can just remind myself and ground myself in this thought of like, it's just connecting, it takes immediate pressure off my shoulders. And so there's always this reminder of like, it's just connecting. And that to me is always like my centering of like, during the session, I actually check my stomach to see if it's tight. And sometimes I move my hands around to see if they're sweating, especially if the client is disclosing a pretty significant trauma story. I want to make sure that I'm not reacting in that sense. And if it does, then I just kind of, make sure my pelvis is not clenched, my stomach's not clenched. And sometimes I'll even take a breath on my own while they're disclosing. And if I can see they're becoming dysregulated, I'll kind of go, let's pause. Let's take a breath together so that we both are now kind of in sync with it, so that we kind of stay in that sense of regulated space. And then after the session, um, I mean, this is my own authenticity in this moment, but like I'll say a prayer for them of just sending healing and comfort to them. And for me, that just kind of brings me back to I do the best I can in this moment, but that's all I can do. Like, I can't do more than that. And so that also, again, kind of alleviates any pressure of me wanting to hold their healing and hold their journey on myself, that I can kind of release it and go, I'm just doing the best I can. And so it kind of just regulates me back down for the next person to walk in.
Okay, all right, very good. Um, kind of opening a larger can of worms here. We all carry personal biases. You all talked about different things that get heaviness that can happen. Dr. Eubanks talked about emotions that happen and not letting those things drive us. And each one of you have talked about that in some shape, form, or fashion. We have different cultural backgrounds. We sit in front of people who have different cultural backgrounds. Unresolved experiences. Dr. Kelly James brought that up. When people bring that in, or we bring those things into the room, how do those things show up as barriers to authenticity? And what does your self-awareness process look like around that?
I'll start us off. I would say that so when we think about bias or anything that we're kind of bringing in to become the stumbling block between us and the client, um, first of all, I'll normalize it that it's human. Like, I think there is this belief system somewhere out there that we're going to be able to relieve any bias, any cultural response or thought process about the world, and the way that the world works, or our own stuff. And I don't think it necessarily has to be a stumbling block, but sometimes it's just a catch in your breath that when they say it, you're like, okay, then you go, oh. And I feel like in some ways I keep kind of like this checklist when a client, if when something comes up where I go, I'm going to check in about that later. Like I'm making a note and telling my brain I'm absolutely going to check in. And I will do peer-to-peer consultation. Especially I have a wonderful business colleague that sometimes will go, oh, this came up today. And that I felt it, like I felt it in the room. So I think that piece, like it is normal to have these moments. How big the stumbling block is depends on your willingness to address it. If we continue with avoidance and we're not putting breath to it, the barrier grows bigger. But if we're willing to say, let me look at it, let me dive in, let me be curious about my own process as I am curious about the clients, there's some beautiful, like fruitful labor there that can be helpful for the future. So I would say that making a mental note, going back, putting breath to it, talking about it, whether it's writing it down, whether it's chatting with it, but not avoiding, not doing the things that we know lead to things getting worse.
Mm.
um, I think that, and even if that means personal therapy around it, I think that that can be very fruitful.
Dr. Kelly James, you brought up unresolved experiences being brought into the room, and I'm just wondering about the barriers that creates to authenticity, and what does your self-awareness process look like around that?
Well, I have done my own emotional healing work, and I put myself through a lot because I didn't like feeling the way I felt. So I put myself through a lot. This was long ago before I understood the therapeutic process because um, I just didn't like the way I felt. And so I feel like I've grown my emotional age up, and so I can be present. But if you have unresolved issues, those are going to automatically be a block because um, depending on what setting you're in, you don't know what the client is bringing in. One place where I worked, someone else did the intake, and you just then started seeing the client. So you didn't have the opportunity to do that intake information to kind of prepare yourself. They're coming in and disclosing, and that can trigger all those issues if you haven't done your work. What Sarah said, being aware, being self-aware, checking your body. Where are you feeling that in your body? Where are my emotions bubbling up? Is my stomach getting tight? Am I, my feet sweaty? That's where I sweat. And on my palms and my feet. So I always wear slip-on shoes so I can slip my feet out of my shoes. So I'm authentic. So I can take them out and set them on the floor. But just being aware of those and doing the things that Sarah said, doing your own therapy, doing consultation, and making sure that you're staying connected and curious with the client and your own issues aren't bleeding into how you interact with them.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Eubanks, personal biases and cultural background differences and whatnot, unresolved experiences. When you think about those things, how might they create a barrier to authenticity? And I know that you talked about that you have been practicing mindfulness for quite some time. Does that play a role in overcoming these things, or is there a different experience that you've had?
It makes me think of clients that I don't like, and I say that from a place of ego, of my fragile ego, like being irritated by, a client's personality or something. Typically, aggressive males are one of the key demographics for me that just really trigger me and like get my ego all riled up and everything. And then all of a sudden I'm focused on, what a jerk this guy is and how he's wrong. Like, it's like I'm not even a therapist anymore. Fortunately, this is brief enough and it's so like present enough that I'm like, oh, okay, there it is. And I have to come back to being curious again, being interested. There's content and process. There's the content of what someone presents as, what they say, what was going on in this situation, or all this other stuff, all the content up here, which content's important, definitely to some degree, but we can't ever disconnect from the process. So how is he saying what he's saying? What is really behind this self-protection thing that's going on? What's behind this loud voice? What's behind, the judgment that he's having of me? Oh, I'm really interested in that. So it ramps up that voice of curiosity so that my own ego squashes it due to being like, my old traumas and stuff coming up that are triggered, and then just recognizing that, and then just, oh, I lost my curiosity. Where's that voice? You know? Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Wow, that's so interesting the way that and things really shifted back at this point. I'm really interested why was that? And so I'll say that, in terms of transparency, like, let's just pause for a second. I noticed that once I asked this question back here, it's like things kind of turned a corner for you. What was that like for you? What was going on for you? Was it something, the way that I said it or something? Or like, I'm just curious what that was about. Then all of a sudden we're in the process. Well, when you said this, I was feeling like this and this, and I don't like when people, talk to me like that and whatever. And I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. So you've had this happen in your life quite a bit to where it's like, now you just get irritated because so tell me more about that. And we're off on a process conversation, and I'm out of my stupid head that's just offended by whatever, and like back to curiosity. So does that make sense? You
Yeah,
follow that?
absolutely. And thank you. I'd like to open up a little bit of a can of worms here. We're all counselor educators here. We're not just therapists, but we're counselor educators, have been for quite some time. And the supervision and training spaces don't always reward vulnerability or authenticity in clinicians in training. So, how do you think training programs can better prepare counselors to show up genuinely without abandoning professional ethics? I'm going to start with Dr. Kelly James. She knew I was, she had the smile, she knew I was coming for her.
Because that is a can of worms. Like I think programs are different.
Mm,
The instructors are different. And so you have instructors that are able to communicate that and express that and work with students to be able to show that. For me, it's being able to communicate to the student to be able to trust themselves,
mm,
because I think the majority of students who come into a master's program or a doctorate program for counseling already understand that process because they're already a counselor. They just don't know the right terminology.
mm,
And so that's kind of how they function in their life. They just need to learn some skills. So they trusting themselves to be able to allow themselves to have all of their knowledge come forth, but be curious. And curiosity is one of those words for me too. It's staying curious with the client, giving yourself permission to be a beginner,
mm,
to not know things. It's okay. We all had to start somewhere. Um, my very first client was a 4-year-old selective mute. And for any of you who will work with kids, if you say something that challenges that child, they will move as far away from you as possible. This kid got under the table because in the room that was as far away from me as he could get. So I had to learn. So it's taking those opportunities when you don't do it right as what can I learn from this and how to do it differently next time. And then paying attention to what naturally fits you. I had during my PhD program, we had to do group therapy, and so I was doing adolescent unit in the inpatient hospital. But my supervisor for my group class wanted me to do his what he had designed for a group session. And partway through, it was not my material. It didn't fit me. And about 10 or 15 minutes into it, all of the kids were bored. And I just finally said, is anyone else as bored as I am with this material? And they all, yes. And I was like, well, let's switch that. Let's find something that fits us. We can still pull from this, but, and be, just being able to say, I made a mistake. Let's try something different. So those things are important, I think, for new therapists.
Okay. Dr. Eubanks, any thoughts there from a counselor and educator standpoint?
Well, yeah, it is a can of worms because it's not on the national exam, you
That's
know.
right.
You're not going to have questions about how to be authentic. You'll have
Yep.
questions maybe about rapport, but it's got to change at that level. It's got to be seen that there's value there enough to where we teach it regularly, not like, oh, you got to, rapport is important. You got to build rapport and stuff like that. It's like, no, this needs to be like a huge part of a class, if not a class
Mhm.
altogether. And so I think it needs to change at a more fundamental level in terms of the educational approach. So.
Okay. Dr. Spencer.
So I agree with everything that's been said. Especially the interesting part is like where the value is with authenticity is longevity in the field. In my personal opinion, I've seen a lot of therapists burn out because they can't sustain a life. I also am a part of several like Facebook groups where therapists are talking and they're like, how come people don't come back? And I'm like, I have a couple of hunches. I guess I have some hunches for you. Um, so I think it's interesting that the thing that I think has most value often has the most like limited presence in some counselor education programs. So I think that's really interesting. And I also think the place that it should exist the most likely is in practicum and internship where students should be coming into their groups being incredibly transparent, incredibly authentic about their experience and receiving, hey, I need this feedback or I crave it and I'm desiring it to improve. And so I think there's a place where it really has a beautiful platform for it to be fertile soil to grow something meaningful. But it hasn't been maybe instilled enough in the program for us to really go, yes, that's right, let's pick it up and move forward. So those are some of the things that kind of, I guess, stand out when I
Okay.
think about where it could exist more as well.
We have time for one more question, and I'd like to hear from each of you very briefly. What advice, there's a lot of new therapists here, and this is being recorded, so people will watch it later as well. As you're thinking about that, what advice would you give a newer clinician trying to find their authentic voice? We'll start over with Dr. Eubanks and we'll work our way to Dr. James and Dr. Spencer will finish off for us.
Wow, that's just a huge question. Oh man. Wow. Uh
I'll come back to you, Dr. Eubanks,
no,
while you
no,
think.
no, no. Let me hem and haw.
Okay, all right.
You asked the question. Man, no, so knowing that this is where success is in being a therapist, it's not in how well you know theories or how well you can demonstrate a model. That's like that'll get you past the exam, like I said earlier, but that's not going to make you successful as a therapist. Understanding what we're talking about and starting to practice it and notice it and get mentorship around this, get supervision around this from someone who does a really good job at this, not someone who's like great at CBT, someone who you see that's like, oh my God, the way that they connect and the way that a client opens up to them, that's amazing. That's the person you want to go for right there. This will keep clients like liking you and coming back to see you. Not how good you can ask a solution-focused miracle question. That's not going to keep people coming back.
Okay.
Um, so yeah,
All
I'll
right.
leave it there.
Dr. Kelly James. Thank you, Dr. Eubanks.
Yeah, that's I. the previous question too, I was thinking for a new clinician, if you think about, I'm going to be doing this 8+ hours a day, what do I need to be able to be my genuine self that many hours a day? It as in this profession. Because if you think about it, longevity, like Dr. Sarah identified, it isn't always real. And so I think trusting yourself and being aware, I just self-awareness, I think, is such a key, because then you can take steps apart from that. If you feel like you're not being authentic, you can go get help. You can go get the supervision. You can go in, counselor discussion groups. A group of my friends are counselors, and we get together, and so we share as a way to help us process our own stuff. And so I just, there are a variety of things, but I think trusting yourself and being aware are probably key.
Um,
Okay. Thank you.
I'll
And Dr.
add
Spencer.
I'll add my advice is watch as many sessions as you possibly can. We are one of the only professions where you're not shadowing a therapist or watching therapy every single week. Hairdressers, welders, race car drivers, like all these people, even college football, like every week they watch the films of other teams. We don't do that. It is such a deficit. How many therapy sessions have you seen? Truly. How many sessions have you seen from 1 to 10? How many times have you seen somebody with a client 30 times and watched the development, right? Like, watch as many sessions that you could possibly watch. And then look at the way that people connect. Look at how it plays out. Look at what it looks like. This is such a deficit of our training, so you need to supplement it. If that means even getting your own therapy so you can watch how the therapy process goes, we need to be watching it. I still to this day will find Carl Rogers on different YouTube clips and just listen to him talk and listen the way he is with clients. I love his voice. But there's something so powerful about being able to grasp that and take it with you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Stewart Spencer and Dr. Kelly James and Dr. Robbie Banks. Thank you all for being here. We're at the top of the hour, a little bit over. This is something that we could go on and on about. It's such a relevant topic. Certainly appreciate you all being here. And for those that watch the recording later, hope that you get a lot out of this. And thank you so much for being present today. And again, thank you, panelists, for being here. This was incredibly informative and important. Thank you all. Have a wonderful rest of your day.